Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tzadik Gimel Amud Beis at the new Mishnah. The Torah tells us that the Derech Rechoike, one who's distant from being able to bring the Karm Pesach on Yudalid Ben Nisan, may then bring a Karm Pesach on Yudalid Be'iyar Pesach Sheni. Our Mishnah now defines what exactly is considered to be Derech Rechoike. Says the Mishnah, Eizihi Derech Rechoike min hamoidin velachutz ukmidasa lekol ruach. The distance from Modi'in and outwards in all directions, that is going to be defined in Derech Rechoike. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, mi iskupas ha'azara velachutz. The askupa of the azara in the Beis Hamikdash, that itself is already considered to be Derech Rechoike. Omar le Rabbi Yossi said to Rabbi Eliezer, Lefikach, therefore I have a support for you from the Torah. Neknokud al hey. The word Rechoike has a nekuda, a dot on top of the hey, which comes to then limit, comes to mimayit, and say, not fully Rechoike, but something that is less than the classical distance, which is not considered to be so far. Loy mipnei sherochoik vaday elami skupas hazor velachutz. From there further, will can be considered to be already derech rechoika, that a person can then be pushed off and bring a carbon pesach sheni. Says the Gemara Amar Ula, min amodin li Yerushalayim chamisha asar milin havya. Ula tells us, what does it mean that it says in the Mishnah according to Rebbe that derech rechoika is from Modin or further? Modin is the distance of 15 milin, he says, from Yerushalayim. Sover lo kiho da'amar Rabbi Bar Chanam Rabbi Yochanan. Ula holds like the following opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Kam mahalech adam bayom. How much can a person typically travel during the day? Someone who's a Beinoni. Asara parsos, which is 40 milin. Me alois hashachar and netzachamo, from alois hashachar, dawn, until when the sun begins peeking up from the horizon. Chamisha milin, that's 5 milin. Mishkia sacham v'atzeis hakoychovim, at the end of the day, from Shkia, when the sun sets, to tzeis hakoychovim, chamisha milin is also 5 milin. So that means you have 5 in the beginning of the day, 5 at the end of the day. So in between is another 30. Pashu la tlosin, you're left over with 30 milin. Chamisar mitzafa lepalga diyoyma, v'chamisar mipalga diyoyma la'orto. We're talking about a day of Nisan, where 15 of those 30 is broken up in the morning from Netzachama until Chatzois, and from Chatzois until the Shkia is another 15 milin. So it comes out to be a total of 40 milin. Ula l'taimei, Ula says according to his reasoning, the Omar Ula, Eizehi derech rechoika, was considered to be somebody who's in a far off place where he cannot bring the carbon pesach. Kol she'ein yachol likane b'shas shchita, when he cannot enter Yerushalayim during the time of the shchita, which means to say, from Chatzois until the Shkia. He cannot then enter, that means he's at least 15 milin from Yerushalayim. Omar Mar, the Gemara now brings back the previous statement. Me alos hashachar ad hanetzachamo chamisha milin. From alos hashachar, we said dawn until Nates is 5 milin. Minolon, where do we know this is so? Dechsiv, it says in the pasuk, ukemoy hashachar ola, like the sun that is coming up. Ve'ya'itzu hamalochim v'goymer, and the malachim hurried loit. V'ksiv, in the next pasuk it says, another pasuk, Hashemesh yotza al haaretz. The Shemesh then came out on the land. V'loit bo tza'ara, and Lot came to tza'ara. So in other words, the first pasuk of Kamo hashachar ola is talking about the dawn, alos hashachar. The second pasuk is talking about netzachamo. V'omer Rabbi Chanina explains, Lididi chazili hahu asra. For me, I saw that place when he traveled to the area of Tzoyara. How was the distance from that? It was 5 million. So we see over here that when you go from Alas HaShachar until the Enes Achama, that's a distance of 5 million. Gufa, the Gemara brings back the statement, Omar Ula, Ezehu derech rechoika. What's considered to be derech rechoika? Kol she'ein yachol likane b'shas shchita. That's Ula's opinion. Ula's opinion, it's 15 milin. He cannot enter from Chatzois until the end where you can sheichet the Korban Pesach, which is the Shkia, 15 milin. Rabbi Yehuda argues, Rabbi Yehuda Omar, Kol she'ein yachol likanes b'shas achila. Somebody who cannot enter Yerushalayim, the Shas Achila. Now there's a Machlokes Tanoim. When is the Shas Achila? Does it mean until Chatzois, Halayla? Or does it mean until the next morning of Amud HaShachar? Al Koponim is much later, much more time. Omar le Rava le'ula. Rava says to Ula, L'didoch kashya, Ula Rav Yehuda kashya. To you it's going to be a kashya, and to Rav Yehuda it's going to be kashya. As follows. L'didoch kashya, to you, Ula, will be a kashya who says that you can go ahead and walk only until the Zman of the Shechita, which is the Shkia. The Amris, you said, Kol she'ein yachol likanes b'shas Shechita. V'ha tamei sheretz de'ein yachol likanes b'shas Shechita. And a tamei sheretz who cannot enter time of Shechita. Meaning to say that he, the one who's tamei sheretz, he is also, after his toivel, he is a tvul yoim, he has to wait till Herav Shemesh, until Tezah Koichovim. The Kamras, and you said, Shoichtim v'zorkin al Tamei Sheretz, you can go and shech the Korban Pesach for the Tamei Sheretz. So that's going to be a kasha on you because he's not somebody who's able to likanes b'shas shchita. Ul Rav Yehuda kasha, kon Rav Yehuda, it's also difficult as follows. The Omar, he says, Kol she'ein yachol likanes b'shas achila. His shita is somebody who cannot enter Yishalayim from time for the time of the achila, which is much later. Whereas somebody who's Tamei Sheretz, since after his Tful Yoim, he will be able to then, we're talking about somebody who then becomes Tahor after Tzeitzah Kachavim, which is the time of the Achila. The Kamar, and yet Rav Yehuda says, Ein Sheichtim v'zorkin al Tamei Sheretz. You cannot go ahead and Zorek, you cannot Sheichet and Zorek the Dam for Tamei Sheretz who did not yet Toivil himself in the mikvah. Omar lei, Ula says, Lo li kasha, v'lo li Rav Yehuda kasha. It's not a difficulty, not according to me and not according to Rav Yehuda, as follows. Li lo kasha, for me it's not a kasha. Why? Because derech rechoike l'tohor, ve'ein derech rechoike l'tomei. There's two different types of people who are potter. There's the individual who's derech rechoike. He is potter because he's at a distance. When he's tohor, the Torah says somebody who's at such a distance is potter from being Korban Pesach Rishon. Whereas the one who is Tamei, even if he's not distant, he's still going to then not be able to bring Korban Pesach Rishon because he cannot eat the Korban Pesach Rishon. He cannot eat it at night. So it's two different types of explanations of the Petur that have nothing to do with each other. There's the definition of Derech Rechoika, and there's the definition of Tamei. And they have two different explanations of why it is that they cannot bring the Korban Pesach Rishon. On top of Tzadik Daled Amal Aleph. Rav Yehuda loy kasha. Now, what you ask the question of Rav Yehuda is also not difficult because Tamei Sheretz Rachmana Dachya. When it comes to Tamei Sheretz, the Torah was doiche the Tamei Sheretz from bringing a Korban Pesach when he did not yet toivil. Even for somebody to be shech the Korban Pesach on his behalf. It says in the pasuk, Ish kiyeh tamei lanefesh. A man who will be tamei lanefesh. That's somebody who comes in contact with a dead body. And we're saying that person, we don't define in the Torah which day we're talking about. So even if Yud Daled Ben Nisan comes out to be on the 7th day of his Tahara, whereby if he did not yet tavel in the mikvah, you cannot go ahead and shech the Korban Pesach on his behalf, even though he will be ready to consume the Korban Pesach at night. So too the Tamei Sheretz, when he is Tamei during the day, if he did not yet toivil, then you cannot shech the Korban Pesach on his behalf. Even though, if you shech the Korban Pesach, and he would then be toivil, at night he can, yes, consume the Korban Pesach because it will be after Tzeis HaKoichovim. So we see over here there's a special p'tur, just as the Tamei Nefesh has. Milo Yaskina, are we not talking about Shechal Shvi, Shelo Dios Be'er Shabbos, V'afilu Hochi, Omar Rachman Dach Lidchi. The Torah does not tell you which day we're talking about, even if it's going to be the 7th day of Tamei Nefesh. Just like somebody who's Tamei Sheretz. Still, we say you cannot go ahead and shech the Korban Pesach on his behalf, even though he would be then ready to consume it on the night of Yudal Ben Nisan. So the Torah itself is doiche, the one who is Tamei Sheretz, And that's why it's not a kasher of Yehuda either, because indeed you can't shecht and zarek the dam for the chamei sheretz. The Gemara now brings Tanu Rabban the following brayso: Haya oimed chutz lemodim v'yochal liknas besusim ufrodim. He is outside the distance of 15 milin, outside of Modi'in, but he could enter technically with a horse or a mule. Yochal ye chayiv. I might think that he would be chayiv. Ask the brayso Tamulam v'derech lo haya. On that, the Torah says, "V'derech lo haya." He was not on the derech. V'halo haya b'derech. But here he was on the derech. Since he was far away, it's true he might get into his car or his donkey or his horse and be able to get there quicker. But since he's considered to be on the derech, he has the ptur, and therefore he's not going to be chayiv. Haya oimed. This is now a corollary of that case. Haya oimed lifnim min hamudin. He's standing within 15 milin. With inside from Modin to Yerushalayim. Ve'in yachal likanis mibnei gemalim v'kronos lema'akvos oisoi. Hamakvos oisoi. And he cannot enter because the gemalim and the kronos, he has carriages and camels that are holding his children and so on, and he cannot enter Yerushalayim as a result. So what's the din? Yocham, I think, lo yehei chayiv. He's not chayiv because, after all, he's within the distance of Modi'in. But he just can't get there. So therefore, although he's within the distance, since he cannot get there, he's not going to be chayiv. Talmud loymar, again, the pasuk states, "V'derech lo haya." It's only if he was not on the derech. V'harei lo haya b'derech. And here he's not on the derech, so he's going to be held accountable. Since over here he's within 15 milin, he's within the distance between Yerushalayim and Modi'in. So therefore, he doesn't have the ptur of derech rechoika, whereby he's going to then be chayiv, held accountable if he doesn't go ahead and bring the carbon Pesach.